하면서 춤을 계속 춰야 했던 거, 그게 가장 극복하기 힘들었던 것 같고요. 제가 다리가 다른 친구들보다 조금 두껍다고 해서 제 다리를 조금 싫어했었는데, 근데 이제 로잔에 갔다 오고 나서 오히려 제 다리에서 나오는 파워풀한 힘이 좋았다고 해주시는 분들도 있다는 걸 느껴가지고 그 두 개가 가장 극복하기도 힘들었고 기억에 남는 것 같아요. 프릭스티 로잔이라는 콩쿨 자체가 학생들 사이에서는 가장 크고 의미 있는 콩쿨이다 보니 제가 그 로잔 영상을 보면서 자라왔기 때문에 그 무대에 서서 제가 춤을 췄다는 것 자체가 엄청 인상 깊었던 것 같아요. 제가 걸어왔던 길, 이게 맞는 방법일까? 근데 그런 의구심을 다 없앨 수 있게 제가 가는 길이 맞았다라는 거를 확인시켜줬던 것 같아요. 그래서 그런 감정이 들어서 조금 감격스러웠던 것 같아요. 한 배역에만 잘 할 수 있는 명수가 아니라 어떠한 배역을 받아도 다 넣어서 소화해낼 수 있는 그런 스펙트럼이 넓은 명수가 되고 싶습니다.
held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Team Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the status UN summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that everyone who wants to be Iran's leader ends up dead, in an apparent warning that future leaders could be targeted. Meanwhile, Iranian intelligence officials have reportedly reached out indirectly to the CIA with an offer to discuss terms for ending the conflict. The U.S. defense chief says Washington's efforts to deal with Tehran's nuclear ambitions will send plenty of signals, responding to a question related to North Korea's criticism of military operations against Iran. The White House also said its policy toward North Korea remains unchanged when asked whether the strike on Iran would affect Washington's approach toward Pyongyang. And amid continuing tensions in the Middle East, the Korean government is considering sending charter planes or military aircraft to bring home Koreans stranded in the region. We begin this morning with the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran that's intensifying, with military strikes expanding and uncertainty growing over Iran's future leadership. Our Buniran starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump issued a stark warning as Iran begins the process of choosing a successor to its supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in joint U.S.-Israeli airstrikes on Saturday. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Wednesday, Trump said anyone who appears eager to assume Iran's top post ends up dead, a remark widely interpreted as a warning that future leaders could face being targeted if Tehran maintains its anti-U.S. stance or continues pursuing nuclear weapons. Trump praised the ongoing U.S.-led military campaign against Iran, codenamed Operation Epic Fury, claiming that Iranian missiles and launch systems were being rapidly wiped out. At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth struck a similarly forceful tone. According to Reuters, Hegseth said the U.S. was winning decisively under Trump's direct command and highlighted a major naval strike against one of Iran's most prized warships.
An American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death.
With the conflict already expanding across the region, Turkey's Ministry of National Defense said Wednesday that a missile fired from Iran toward Turkish airspace had been shot down by NATO. Israel has continued to strike Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, while Iranian missiles have targeted Israel and Gulf states. According to the US-based human rights activists in Iran, the war has already killed over 1,000 civilians in Iran, while global energy markets and international travel have been disrupted. Behind the scenes, diplomacy appears uncertain. The New York Times reports that Iranian intelligence officials quietly reached out to the CIA through intermediaries shortly after the fighting began, signaling interest in talks. U.S. officials remain skeptical, and Trump has since declared it too late for negotiations. Meanwhile, according to Reuters, Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, is viewed by Iran's political establishment as a potential successor, raising fresh questions about whether Iran's next leader will signal change or further escalation. 문혜련, Arirang News.
And U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also says Washington's military operation against Iran will send clear signals about its stance on nuclear threats amid criticism from North Korea. The White House also added that the campaign does not change the U.S. approach toward the North, maintaining a strategy of deterrence and diplomatic flexibility. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says Washington's ongoing military operation against Iran will send plenty of signals as the United States moves to address Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Hegseth made the remarks during a press briefing on Wednesday on the U.S. military campaign codenamed Operation Epic Fury, which began Saturday in coordination with Israel. Responding to a question about North Korea's criticism of the operation, the defense secretary said the situation involving Iran should not be viewed in connection with other countries. He stressed that the United States remains focused on dealing with Iran's nuclear ambitions, adding that the steps taken in the process will send clear signals. His comments came after Pyongyang condemned the U.S.-Israel campaign on Sunday, calling it an unlawful act and a violation of Iran's sovereignty. Meanwhile, the White House says Washington's policy toward North Korea remains unchanged. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Wednesday there has been no shift in the U.S. position on North Korea when asked whether the strike on Iran over its nuclear program would affect Washington's approach toward Pyongyang. The Trump administration maintains what it describes as a dual-track strategy toward North Korea, combining strong deterrence with a high degree of diplomatic flexibility. While the administration continues to uphold the goal of complete denuclearization officially, Washington has shown a shift toward nuclear management and a de facto acknowledgement of North Korea's nuclear status. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And South Korea is considering sending charter planes or military aircraft to bring home its nationals stranded in the Middle East amid the escalating conflict between the United States and Iran. Second Vice Foreign Minister Kim Jin-ah said Wednesday that the government is reviewing multiple options following an interagency meeting on the situation, including dispatching additional pan-government rapid response teams. Kim said authorities are closely monitoring South Koreans stranded in the United Arab Emirates and other countries. She also said that Seoul is coordinating with relevant ministries to ensure citizens can return home swiftly and safely. According to the second vice foreign minister earlier this week, around 17,000 South Korean nationals remain in roughly 10 Middle Eastern countries affected by the conflict. And now for a closer look at the situation in the Middle East, we're joined today by Mohammed Gouda, professor of Middle Eastern Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. So, Professor Gouda, the initial U.S.-Israeli strikes killed Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei, but senior U.S. government officials have said the regime change was not their goal. So, what's the real U.S. motive in attacking Iran? What is U.S. seeking in this war with Iran?
Well, of course, it's very hard to know exactly, considering that we have multiple signals from U.S. officials. I mean, Secretary of State is saying something, President Trump is saying something else. However, I think what's happening here is that we have a collaboration between Iran and Israel, between U.S. and Israel, in destroying Iran's ability to threaten U.S.-Israel in the future. This goes also with Netanyahu's claim to reshape the Middle East. So we should not forget about this, which has been said many times in the last few years. We have an energy security logic that's very important, I think, for the U.S. And also we should not forget that we have a greater scheme of things that U.S. is trying to limit all the, I would say cronies of China in the region and also Latin America. We have seen Venezuela collapse. We're now seeing Iran collapse. So I think U.S. is also thinking about China, although it's not being mentioned directly, but I think this is one big thing that's happening behind the curtains. So U.S. has multiple motives, unlike the claim that it doesn't have big motives. I think it has big motives behind this, considering, of course, the huge cost of war that's happening right now.
Right, and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's second son appears to have emerged as the leading candidate to be Iran's next supreme leader. What do we know about him, and what does this mean for the Iranian regime?
Well, it's still not yet confirmed about this. As President Trump have just said a few hours ago, that it's not safe to become a supreme leader right now. So it's not yet confirmed. What we know about Mujtaba is that he's a hardliner. He's very close to the ICRG, to the Revolutionary Guard in Iran. I think it will be very hard to maintain this position because Iran is now trying to assume stability or to show that it's stable, and it's very hard to find this kind of balance right now. So what Iran is trying to do right now is to shed this kind of curtain of secrecy of what's happening behind the line to show that it's still intact. However, there are still many things that are upcoming. So it's still too early to know that Mujtaba Khamenei will be the next supreme leader. We have to wait and see about this.
I see. And Trump also says the war could go on for weeks. And some analysts say Iran actually wants to draw out this conflict to drive up the cost of the war for the United States. What's your take on this, and how long do you think this war will last?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, it's very hard to know exactly when the war will going to end. But I mean, the most of the analysis is talking about weeks, actually. We have to look at the economic side of things. I mean, we have to look at the data. So the estimated daily cost for the U.S. is around $1 billion each day of war. So it's really a big amount of money that's being spent. And this is more or less what's the same cost as it was in Afghanistan case. For Iran, it's a different story. We have asymmetrical warfare. We have very cheap weapons. Just for the viewers to understand, one cheap drone of Iran costs around $30,000. Requires a $3 million interceptor missile to stop. So the cost of interception is very, very high for Israel and US. And this is what Iran is bargaining on, actually, to think about the economic cost, the economic impact, and so on. I think, as an economist, that way of thinking of Iran will not get it very far, because U.S. is already down the line, is already sending. We have pushing towards troops from Kurdistan right now and Kurdish minorities in Iran and so on. So I don't think U.S. will back away from this, especially with the personality of President Trump.
I see. And this conflict is affecting nearby places like Dubai and Qatar, and also Lebanon as Hezbollah joins this war. How do you think the situation in the Middle East will unfold? Could it expand to a wider war?
Well, we are seeing it expanding in the case of Lebanon. We have seen also yesterday some missiles coming from Iraq to Saudi Arabia, which is very shocking. So it's already expanding, but I wouldn't say that Gulf countries will wage war against Iran. Perhaps they will, of course, all diplomatic ties will be already severed by the attacks of Iran in the Gulf countries, which I think was not a great move, diplomatically speaking. So I don't think that we will have more escalation in the Gulf countries, but what we will have is that Gulf countries, I think, will maybe logistically even back up the U.S. Forces going to Iran or U.S. Powers towards Iran. So we will not see this, but we will see this mainly in Lebanon. So look out for Lebanon, look out for Iraq, look out for the Shia also in the Houthi, and this is where we will have more escalation. But other than that, I don't think we will have many other escalations in the region.
I see. We'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Gura, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un inspected a new 5,000-ton warship ahead of its deployment and oversaw a successful ship-to-land strategic cruise missile test, according to its state media this morning. The vessel, named Cheon, is North Korea's first deployer of its size and is being promoted as a new symbol of the regime's maritime defense capability, with Kim calling its performance during sea trials satisfactory. He said Pyongyang plans to build 2 destroyers of the same or higher class every year under its next 5-year defense plan, claiming the Navy's nuclear armament is progressing smoothly. Separately, he also attended a nationwide military sniper shooting competition, stressing the growing importance of sniper units in modern warfare and calling for a qualitative leap in their combat readiness. Meanwhile, South Korea's rival parties have agreed to fast-track a special bill aimed at facilitating large-scale investment in the United States, citing concerns that further delays could invite trade retaliation. The National Assembly Special Committee handling said on Wednesday that the legislation began formal negotiations on 9 related bills, with both sides aiming to end the review process by March 9th. Lawmakers say a broad consensus has already been reached on major issues, including transparency, oversight, and whether to establish a separate investment entity. The agreement comes following concerns that delays could trigger strong trade retaliation from Washington amid heightened global tensions, including conflict involving the U.S. and Iran. Over in Spain, small and medium-sized South Korean businesses are making their presence felt at this year's Mobile World Congress. Our business correspondent Park Junan takes us to Barcelona, where Korean SMEs are promoting their technologies.
At the Mobile World Congress, companies, exhibitors, and potential buyers from 200 countries gather to discover hidden gems in the tech world.
It's not just global mega companies that showcase their latest technologies. Here at MWC, there are dedicated pavilions like this one to promote small and medium-sized Korean businesses.
This year, 131 SMEs from Korea participated to showcase technologies tailored for global markets. Among them, there was one company which was nominated for this year's Global Awards, often called the Oscars of the mobile industry. The company was N-Open. It provides biometric authentication and identity verification solutions using on-device AI and a physically isolated token system, enabling secure authentication without relying on servers or the cloud.
We are extremely proud that our solution was nominated for the GLOMO Awards, especially given the challenging environment for entering the biometrics market in Europe. Going forward, we will continue to make every effort to ensure that our solution can make a full-scale entry into the European market.
A potential buyer from Spain who visited Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency's pavilion praised the technology on display.
I think the main interest is the technology of Korean companies, because Korean technology is amazing, is cutting edge, one of the best in the world. Apart from sales, which is our core objective, we can also support them in all the regulatory compliance and the setup process.
As of Wednesday local time, participating SMEs had recorded 556 business consultations, with expert consultations reaching around $195 million and contracts under negotiation totaling $18.6 million. Park Junan, Arirang News, Barcelona.
The start of a new school semester isn't just exciting for young students. It also marks a fresh beginning for manhakdos, or students who study at a later age. Women who are unable to finish school earlier in life for various reasons are now returning to the classroom, proving that it's never too late to learn. Our Jong-un has their story.
In class, students repeat after the teacher, carefully spelling out the English alphabet for the very first time. Laughter and smiles fill the room as they explore subjects that once felt out of reach, but long sparked their curiosity. Among them is 87-year-old Kim Moon-ja, clutching her pen, excited for her very first day of school. Though she began her education later than most, there's no shortage of enthusiasm.
I have to study hard, because if someone else learns 10 letters, I need to make at least one of them truly mine, so I have to keep trying my best.
Kim was forced to stop her early school education at a time when many girls were unable to continue their studies. As a teenager, she lived through the Korean War, carrying responsibilities that were far beyond her years. Instead of going to school, she worked to support her family and made sure her children received the education she couldn't. So now, even lingering injuries cannot dampen her determination to learn. These adult learners, known in Korean as manhakdo, are returning to school later in life, proving that it is never too late to begin again. Many of these women who have spent much of their lives as housewives are now in their 40s, 50s, or even 80s, and are finally pursuing the education they once had to set aside.
When a new semester begins, new students enroll and bring their dreams with them. I see it as an opportunity to help them achieve those dreams, which makes me feel very happy and excited.
For these high school students, this is more than just the start of a new semester in education. It is the beginning of a long-delayed dream. Jong-un, Arirang News.
Good morning. I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. The Spanish government has denied White House claims that Madrid agreed to cooperate with U.S. military operations in the Middle East. Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Alvarez on Wednesday rejected White House statements that Madrid had agreed to support U.S. strikes against Iran. The denial follows President Trump's threat on Tuesday to cut off all trade after Spain barred the U.S. from using joint military bases for its attacks on Iran. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez also on Wednesday reaffirmed his no to the war policy, describing the conflict in Iran as, quote, Russian roulette with millions of lives. A U.S. submarine on Wednesday sank the Iranian frigate Iris Dena in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Sri Lanka. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed the U.S. Navy conducted the strike against the vessel in international waters. Sri Lankan military rescuers recovered 87 bodies from the site and treated 32 survivors at the hospital in the port city of Gul. The Iranian ship was traveling from India to Iran following a multilateral naval exercise in the Bay of Bengal. Sri Lankan authorities are continuing search and rescue operations for approximately 60 missing crew members. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Wednesday confirmed the U.S. will raise the global import tariff rate to 15% this week. That's an increase from the current 10% tariffs. The administration is implementing the hike under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. It is a 150-day temporary measure, but Bessent told CNBC that during that time, the government will conduct studies for more permanent tariffs. That measure was brought in after the Supreme Court struck down Trump's previous tariffs. A total power failure on Wednesday disconnected the Cuban national electrical grid, leaving most of the island without electricity. The state electric utility UNE attributed the blackout to an unexpected outage caused by a boiler leak at the Antonio Guterres thermoelectric plant. The Energy Ministry confirmed that the outage halted water services, transportation, and state media broadcasts across Havana and western provinces of Cuba.
Today marks the Gyeongchip, the seasonal division signaling the awakening of nature from winter dormancy. We'll have spring warmth during the day, but rain and snow are expected nationwide. Rain will begin in western regions late this afternoon and spread across the country tonight with 5 to 20 millimeters expected through tomorrow. But mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province might receive 15 centimeters of snowfall. Central inland regions could get about 8 centimeters of snow. But until this precipitation arrives, air quality will remain bad, mainly in the western parts of Korea. And this afternoon, highs will go up a couple of degrees higher than yesterday with Seoul and Busan, both topping out at 13 degrees Celsius, but Daegu, Gwangju, Jeju will be slightly warmer at 16 degrees. And today's precipitation will bring colder air to the country. Morning lows will drop down to below 0 degrees this weekend, bringing a spring cold spell.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Curious about Korea?
And especially K-food? How familiar are you with Korean food?
The sea on 3 sides, a mountainous terrain, and 4 distinct seasons. Thanks to these conditions, Korean cuisine bursts with diverse and unique flavors.
Do you prefer sweet or spicy?
A meat lover or a seafood connoisseur?
Can't decide?
There's got to be something here that you like.
For Koreans, rice is foundational. It's a staple and the centerpiece to all meals in Korea. There's bibimbap, rice mixed with vegetables, gukbap, rice in hot soup, and kimbap is the demand around the world.
For me, it's noodles over rice. Korea has amazing noodle dishes. Chuy ramen and cold naengmyeon to blow away the heat. A meat lover here, pork, beef, chicken, I like them all. Did you know that bulgogi is listed in the English dictionary? There's also the famous chimek, chicken and beer, which is the best combo for a night out with friends.
Surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, Korea has a great selection of seafood, from raw fish to piping hot seafood soups. It's mouth-watering just talking about it. The 2 pillars of Korean condiments, gochujang and soy sauce.
Ooh, what do you prefer?
Gochujang. I like anything made with gochujang. In general, Koreans love spicy food.
I prefer the soy sauce base. There's something about the salty and sweet that hits the right spot. I think even those who are trying Korean food for the first time will really like it.
But that's not all.
We can't leave out the street food. If you're in Korea, it's a must try. They are both treats for your eyes and mouth.
How about it? Mouth-watering, right?
Korean food, you've got to try it. Discover a whole new world of flavors.
drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
We're here to bring a new type of news show. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Thursday, March 5th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Chia.
Good morning, Soo-jin.
Good morning. Also Fabulous with us.
Great to be here.
To have you, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're headed toward the end of the work week, and as Friday inches closer, maybe you're already thinking about slowing down, recharging, or even picking up something new to learn. But that raises an interesting question. These days, students have AI tutors, online lectures, and study apps at their fingertips. But before we talk about that, let's take a little trip down memory lane and talk about how the generation that grew up before all of that studied. So Jian, how did millennials study?
Well, I studied mainly with my textbook, which is sort of a classic line in Korea. During the interviews, like the top scores in the Suneung or Korean CST, they say that their success was mainly because of the textbook. Well, looking back on my school days, technology wasn't as advanced as it is for children these days, but we still explored those quite a variety of ways to study. I attended academy classes, a lot of private tutoring, and I was introduced to online lectures relatively early on, and I experienced those live video classes with live chats and workbooks were thick, and I used lots of colourful highlighters, and because most of my learning was paper-based and printed books. And
very analog.
Very analog indeed. And if I didn't know a word, a vocabulary, I looked it up in a paper book that is called a dictionary. I'm sure
what is that?
know this book. Are you familiar with it?
Never
it's a very
heard of
thick
it.
book known as a dictionary. I use my MP3 player for listening practice, though mostly for pop songs indeed. And we were the generation that experienced both traditional ways of studying and digital learning at the same time. That's the millennial. So who is with me?
So it sounds like you did experience the best of both generations. What about you, Fabio? How did Gen Z study?
Well, actually pretty similar, but I feel like during my generation, technology was definitely more present. In classrooms, we always had digital boards, and then most schools would give students these very small laptops with limited internet access. In some cases, they would even substitute all of the textbooks for digital tablets, which is quite modern, although things are becoming a little bit more analog these days. We obviously didn't have AI tools, and because of that, in order to pretty much filter and organize all of the information available on the internet, Wikipedia became the best friend for most students, and that was my case too. And for exams, people would just memorize all of the contents from the textbooks and pretty much bomb it during the exam day, which meant that most of us ended up forgetting about all of the contents after the exam took place. In my case, the method that really helped me was pretty much forcing my family and my friends to ask me all the questions and do this kind of like oral exam, and that helped me remember things a lot better. So I guess that human interaction played a big part in that.
Sometimes it's like the analog ways that really work as well. So it shows that how it's not always technology itself, but the active engagement, like being quizzed by others, that make learning stick. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. The way Gen Z studies and communicates looks dramatically different from previous generations, largely shaped by the technology now at their fingertips. From AI-powered study tools to constant online connectivity, learning has become faster and more interactive than ever before. But while these advancements offer clear benefits such as convenience and instant information, some researchers argue there may be trade-offs. In several key cognitive indicators, Gen Z has shown a lower performance compared to earlier generations. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at why some experts say Gen Z could be the first generation in modern history to score lower than their parents on certain intelligence measures, the impact social media may be having on brain development, and how countries overseas are moving to regulate teen social media use. As I just saw in a video, concerns about Gen Z's cognitive performance are no longer just cultural commentary. They're now part of formal academic and policy discussions. The debate has even reached Capitol Hill in the United States, and one neuroscientist recently brought this issue directly before U.S. lawmakers. So what did he tell Congress about Gen Z's cognitive scores, Jian?
Well, it is an alarming development indeed. So for many, it feels both surprising and alarming, and also deeply concerning. According to neuroscientist Dr. Jared Cooney-Hubas, Gen Z may be the first generation to record lower academic performance than the one before it. Students born between 1997 and 2010 showed lower results than earlier generations. He actually said worse academically than the one before. So the gaps were observed in attention span, working memory, literacy, numeracy, executive function, which is the ability to plan and control their behavior, and also general IQ was affected in their general performances. In several cognitive indicators, including overall IQ trends, scores seem to stop improving or even decline. So for many experts, the message is absolutely clear. Something in the way we learn is changing.
I think for me, what's most striking about this is that the claim that the Gen Z is the first generation to record lower standardized academic scores than the one immediately before it, and not just in one area, but across various areas, including overall IQ, and which is very concerning. And also, what makes it even more surprising is that this trend breaks a long-standing historical pattern. So, how does this fabric compare to past generational trends?
Well, it compares in the sense that it is the first time we are seeing this type of results. You see, researchers have measured generational cognitive development since the late 1800s. And until now, every single generation outperformed their parents. But that is not the case right now with the Z generation. And so because of that, a lot of people are concerned, because most experts do point out the fact that younger generations right now are having a tougher time to keep up with the standards and levels of intelligence from their previous generation. Interestingly enough, though, Gen Z doesn't really agree, and they show lots of confidence in their intellectual level despite this very depressing results. In fact, many consider their learning abilities and their level of intelligence to be definitely much more higher than those results. But experts do point out that this excessive confidence might be them just overestimating their learning skills, which is quite depressing for me, honestly. I hope that is not the case.
I mean, that reversal is truly fascinating. For such a long time, each generation had outperformed the last, and at the same time, like you said, Gen Z appears to be, it's quite ironic, they seem to rate their own learning ability more highly than their measured outcomes suggest, which is also very Gen Z coded. I feel like that confidence. So what's driving this cognitive shift in Gen Z, Julian?
That is quite a good question indeed. So we have to think about, why are they performing worse academically? Why aren't they studying? One widely discussed explanation is early and constant use of digital devices are the reason. Yeah, Gen Z is the first generation to grow up fully immersed in screens from early childhood. Dr. Hobas has pointed to rising screen time as a possible contributing factor. He argues that traditional learning, reading out loud, writing by hand, and sustained focus engages deeper cognitive processing. In contrast, much of Gen Z's learning has relied on edtech platforms. I'm talking about online learning apps, short concept summaries, and video-based instruction. Many students may feel they understand the material, the content, after watching or skimming content on a screen. But the truth is, research suggests that this kind of surface learning process is harder to store in your long-term memory. So it's a bit like reading an article. You're reading the article, but you're not totally understanding the article itself. You don't know the headline, the subject itself. So it is indeed fast to consume, but easy to forget at the same time.
Right, I think that distinction that you mentioned about feeling like you understand something, actually retaining it in long term is crucial. And this isn't just about individual study habits, it also ties into broader educational structures. So how has educational technology, or edutech, improved learning outcomes overall?
Well, it has improved the fact that we now have access to loads of information, and we can also fact check everything. The problem is that experts still point out that human intelligence usually inherently comes through social interaction. That means engaging with other people, talking, and having pretty much a debate about things that happen all around us. So deep learning is pretty much focused on this social process. Without that, which is what we're facing right now, edu technology brings us to a realm where everything is remote education, digital education, and individualized learning. According to data from the National Assessment of Education Progress, NAEP, when students were provided only one technological device to complete their tests in an individualized way, they showed lower scores than controlled groups that didn't have this type of devices or this type of instructions. So this type of research suggests that though devices do give us lots of tools that can be quite helpful in discovering different things, they can become a little bit overwhelming or hard to handle. And in the end, they might not be the most optimal for ending up with, knowledge that is retained, which is the biggest problem.
Right, and this kind of goes along with what you said about what you said in the interest. Well, you said what helped you really retain the information was when your family members would quiz you on the material, right? That's
a
what
memory that I could attach to that specific moment.
Yeah, right.
But when you're seeing your screen every single day, every single hour, everything belongs to the same level of excitement.
Right.
So I think it's pretty hard to learn.
Agreed. So if data from the U.S. National Assessment of Educational Progress shows that students given individual devices often perform worse than those taught without them, it suggests that simply adding technology doesn't automatically enhance learning and may in some contexts even hinder it. So we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking why is Gen Z's cognitive performance evaluated lower than previous generations. So here's what the results showed. Majority of respondents, 58%, cited excessive use of digital devices as the primary reason. Another 24% pointed to reduced face-to-face interaction, suggesting that less in-person discussion and social learning may also be playing a role. 13% said summary-focused bite-sized learning is to blame, while just 5% believe the issue stems from insufficient overall study time. So what stands out here is that most viewers aren't blaming effort, they're blaming the learning environment. The concern isn't that Gen Z isn't studying, but that the way they're studying and the digital ecosystem surrounding them may be fundamentally reshaping how their brains process and retain information. So to gain an expert's perspective on this, we're going to talk to someone who's part of the education sector. That conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Dr. Park Nam-gi, the former president of Gwangju National University of Education. Hello, Dr. Park. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Yeah, it is my great pleasure to have a chance to talk with Gen Z about your intelligence level.
Right, so as a Gen Z, I felt pretty targeted as well by the discussion we had earlier. So would you say, are Gen Zs truly less intelligent than their parents? What are your thoughts on this?
I would be very careful with that claim. It is not strictly accurate to say like that. So while there are reports suggesting a decline in IQ, the primary evidence they used, such as PISA and team score measures, learned competencies that is strongly shaped by schooling and environment, rather than innate intellectual potentials, IQ. So it is a logical leap to conclude that intelligence itself has dropped. So historically, we saw the Flynn effect, where an average IQ score rose throughout the 20th century. We are now seeing a reverse Flynn effect in some countries, not every country, and where scores have stagnated or slightly dipped. However, this may reflect a shift in cognitive strength rather than a loss of intelligence. So, for instance, recent declines might be temporary results of pandemic-related learning gaps and social isolation rather than a permanent generation decline. So my bottom line is this. There isn't a strong proof that Gen Z has lower innate intelligence, but there is credible evidence that some key skills are slipping, especially literacy and what I call cognitive endurance, meaning the ability to focus and think deeply for a sustained period. So that's a serious education issue whatever label we put on it.
I see, Dr. Park, quite positive indeed. I like it. Then what factors are driving findings that Zenz shows a lower cognitive performance?
Yeah, the three mechanisms come up repeatedly. So first, digital distraction. So already you talk about that many digital platforms are engineered for rapid switching, constant engagement. Even learning device can train habits like frequent checking, scrolling, and multitasking. When attention is repeatedly interrupted, you lose time to task switching, make more errors, and form weaker long-term memories. Second, mode effects. You talk about this one also. The medium changes how we read and learn. So for longer or more complex text, paper often shows a small advantage in comprehension. So one explanation is that paper supports a stable mental map in our brain of the text, while scrolling can make location and structure feel less anchored. So it's hard to take it out because there's no anchor, especially for younger learners. And third, off-task behavior. The digital temptation problem, unless classrooms and devices are tightly managed, students can easily drift into unrelated activities, which means more screen time does not equal more learning time. So importantly, the document also notes a key nuance. Much of the evidence is correlational and sometimes based on students' self-reports. So we couldn't claim that is a screen cause lower ability. So correlation and cause is different in a simplistic way. So the risk depends on how technology is used, the level of teacher control, and the quality of instructional design, I think.
Well, Professor, I feel much more reassured right now after your explanation. And what long-term impact could this shifts in education methods, such as technology-driven learning, have on cognitive development?
Yeah, long-term, the biggest task is not lower intelligence, I think, but a shift in cognitive habits, weaker sustained attention, reduced deep reading stamina, and the shallower processing, especially if learning becomes dominated by fast, fragmented notification, rich screen experience. Over years, that can mean students become less practiced at building complex mental models, following long arguments, and retaining knowledge. Another impact is on literacy and comprehension, particularly for longer explanatory text. If most reading happens in scrolling environment without strong supports such as page structure, annotation routine, deliberate reading, students may develop a scheme mindset that undermines understanding and memory. But the long-term picture is not automatically negative. The document emphasized that in limited, well-designed cases like tightly constrained adaptive practice or targeted remediation, technology can support basic skill building. The key is right tool, right test, right controls, rather than replacing the fundamentals of deep learning. So the strategic takeaway is keep tech purpose limited and well-governed, protect conditions for deep work, especially in earlier grades, and design learning so that attention, comprehension, and long-term memory are deliberately trained, not accidentally eroded. Thank you.
Right, so I guess the challenge will be figuring out how to use technology in the right way and in moderation. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just spoken with an expert about whether Gen Z is truly less intelligent than their parents, what may be driving these cognitive patterns, and the potential long-term impact of changing education methods. But the conversation doesn't just stop in the classroom. Many researchers are now turning their attention to, of course, social media. So how does heavy social media use affect teen cognition?
Well, the thing is, a US research team tracked teenagers' social media usage patterns over a certain period of time, that is 3-year period, and they assessed language skills, memory, and processing speed. The group that used social media frequently over a long period of time scored the lowest in language and memory tests, while lighter users demonstrated stronger overall cognitive performance. Researchers also noticed that excessive social media use was linked to higher rates of depression, anxiety, and sleep problems. So these emotional difficulties may also make it harder to focus and think clearly over time. So in short, the more they have the screen time, their performances declined.
What's concerning also is that this experiment was done over a long period of time as well. And this growing evidence that this lowers cognitive performance shows that that's why it's influencing policy decisions. So how are countries now restricting social media use?
Well, countries like Australia already decided last year that they're going to have legislation that prevents minors under 16 to access these social media platforms, banning the use for many of these children and adolescents without that parental support. Same goes for Denmark and Spain, who are already looking forward to this new boundary for people who are under 15 or 16 years of age. In terms of Denmark, it would be completely banning the use of these applications, and for Spain, it would be having a parental control type of contract.
So it's clear that countries are taking this on a national level. So this brings us to a bigger question of balance. What does a healthy learning environment look like to you?
Well, I think you read this article before. Since 2025, the government announced they will use an AI-based digital textbooks for students in primary, elementary schools in Korea. And there is no denying the advantages. We all know that the AI can analyze mistakes, personalize the next task they have to do, and track progress. Immediate feedback and high engagement to make learning efficient. But is it really effective? Many parents, including myself, remain concerned. From a parent's perspective, convenience can easily blur the line between screen time and study time. So for growing children, too much screen time can make it harder for them to focus a lot and think as well. So one begins to wonder, is this learning or just having fun, just watching something on screen time? So that is why I still value paper-based learning. So as you mentioned earlier, the balance between technology and also thinking about this technology and deeper learning should be a thing that we have to talk about a lot.
Right. At the same time, people still say clear boundaries are really important, especially for young children. So, Fabio, should young children rely on traditional learning?
I do feel that traditional learning has a lot of benefits. At the same time, there's this big dilemma because we cannot let go of this very important and powerful tools that we have right now. And so we need to go with the times. And because of that, we need to adapt our system so that it's a little bit more controlled. There's some guidance. I feel like the power of autonomy that a lot of students have right now with these technological tools ends up becoming, a very blurred line between screen time, and that can become a distraction, and learning time. And I feel that for myself too. Sometimes I would spend hours of my day just watching my screen, and then I would finish my day without remembering most of what I consumed. So I do think that the learning process that is involved with this technological tool should be controlled and supervised.
So as technology reshapes how the next generation learns, the question may not be whether Gen Z is less capable, but whether the environment around them is changing faster than their brains can adapt. And finding the right balance between innovation and healthy cognitive development is likely to be one of the most important challenges of our time. And Arirang TV is celebrating its 30th anniversary with a special global viewer event, My Arirang Story. So share your experience with Arirang TV and what it has meant to you through a photo or video. Submit your story by March 8th, 2026, and selected entries will receive BTS's 5th album, Arirang. So visit www.arirang.com for more details. We can't wait to hear from you. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. My News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Chia.
The pleasure is mine.
And also Fabio.
Thank you for having me.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And whether you're Gen Z or not, we hope that you keep your mind active and your screen time in check. We are
News Generation.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea. If you've signed a contract for a one room, obviously you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.